I Should Be Writing Season 20, Episode 16.
Well, I should be writing. I should be working on my craft. I should be writing. I should be submitting my next draft. But I'm sitting home watching Doctor Who.
Hi there, welcome to I Should Be Writing. This is a podcast for wannabe fiction writers. It streams live on Twitch and YouTube Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, or you can download it from the podcast feed. Most everybody knows how to download via podcast feed. If you don't, ask somebody. Anyway, I talk about writing. I talk about a lot of the emotional sides of writing. I talk about a lot of the things that get in beginners' ways, including beginners. And I take questions. And a recent question has come up, which is about short fiction. And I hadn't really talked about short fiction in a while, so I figured that was a good thing to cover. I usually start by talking about what I've been up to keep myself accountable to you guys because of the name of the show. Unfortunately, I did a whirlwind trip to Buffalo, New York this past weekend. Flew up, loaded a truck, and then drove back home to North Carolina. And that was my weekend. And this week has been recovering from that trip, unloading truck, moving stuff around in the house to make room for the new furniture, and then I got a migraine. So life's good. Oh, I did write once. This is a little trick. If you're blocked, write something that you don't have to write. Because I promised a friend of mine that I would write her a story for her birthday. Baldur's Gate fanfic for her birthday. And I thought, well, I kind of know where I want to go with that. So instead of doing anything I have to do, I'll write that. I'll write 1,000 words on that. And a couple of hyper-focused hours later, I had 5,200 words of a short story. So yeah, it wasn't very productive for my career, but I did make my friend happy. And it was fun. So yeah, I'm still kind of in a noodling part of my novel edits. I'm working on my murder mystery in my head. So I haven't started the edits yet, but I've started the thinky parts of the edits. Some may call it procrastination, but I still think I need to think about it. So that's what I've been up to. But yeah, that's about all I've done this week. But I'm pulling up our questions on Discord. Another platform I don't know a whole lot about, but at least I can move around in there. Oh no! Valerie's missing stream because vet. Thank you, Primalina. Alrighty. Alright, so Michelle wants to know about getting started with submitting short stories, and Michelle adds a whole lot of sub-questions to that, because I should start doing that. So the questions are, how many friends do you have read it? Is there a season? What's a rookie mistake? You're only supposed to submit to one place, aren't you? Does everybody have a giant spreadsheet to track submissions? What do you wish you knew when you started it? Best thing you ever submitted that you shouldn't have? I don't know the answer to the last one, but with the caveat that I am not getting short fiction published these days. I don't really have it in my head. I don't have short stories like really come to mind. Usually my ideas are more novel length, and if I either do short stories that I've been solicited for, or like this gift for my friend, which is just a simple little was a simple Baldur's Gate fanfic that was very silly. But I am a short fiction editor, so I do know about things from that angle. And I do know that things are a little bit different than last time I was very heavily submitting short stories, which was a couple of decades ago. I can't believe that, but yes. But still, I know some things that have changed. Anyway, so it starts with how many friends to read it. And if anybody in the chat wants to correct me, because you're actually, I know there's some who are actively submitting a lot of short stories. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I'd say get more than one and fewer than 5 people to read it if you need people to read it, because you'll want what you're looking for is not necessarily everyone to say they like it. You don't want to give your story to those people. You want to hear critiques that hopefully are similar to each other. Because that's the easiest thing. If a lot of people find the same problem, then you know it's a problem. If one person doesn't like this character and one person doesn't like that plot twist and one person doesn't like the way the ending hit, it can cause confusion, and that's when you have to decide where you think you're right and the person critiquing you is wrong. But if everybody says the love story is very weak, then at least you know what to focus on. So don't send it to many people, but get more than one opinion if you're looking for beta readers. Is there a season to these things? No, not necessarily. Different magazines have different seasons, or different open periods, rather. Clarkesworld famously is always open. When they had to close submissions, it was notable because they had been hit with this deluge of AI-written short stories that were just horrible. So they had to stop submissions. You want to look at the short story market. And if anybody wants to give me an idea of, I forget where people find those. It's a QueryTracker is one. Is Duotrope another one? There are a couple places where you can track all of your submissions and look at what markets are open and what markets are closed. And some of them you have to pay for and some of them you don't. But these are really good places to start tracking things. Submission Grinder is the most popular. Thank you, Underpope. I knew there was one I was leaving out. Submission Grinder is the most popular. And from there you can see what places are open. You want to look at the different magazines and consider what they publish. Now, this is one thing that really gets to me because I am, I am a co-editor of a magazine, Escape Pod. And we publish science fiction, but we publish a very specific kind of science fiction. Then we get we get mostly science fiction stories. People do understand that part of the submission guidelines, but then they just send us a science fiction story. They don't care about the rest of it. And as readers, we appreciate all sorts of stories, but as editors, we try to focus on escapism, hope, humor, just stories that make you feel good when you're done reading. And, that's broad. One of the ones I fought for was a time travel story that we published last year because it was a little dark, but it was dark in a Twilight Zone kind of way. And that made it really fun for me. So even though fun is subjective, giving us let's use science to bring back my ex-wife who's dead and our divorce was really messy and, it failed and now I'm sad. Not really for us. So when you start deciding where to send your story, look at what your story is and look at the submission guidelines. Because sometimes it takes magazines a long time because no one's getting paid. Okay, very few people are getting paid a living wage to do this. So we're all doing it in our spare time, and we get behind a lot. And so if you send your story to a market that's not appropriate for, you're wasting your own time. You're wasting our time, but we don't hold that against people. But you're wasting your own time to actually get it to a market that might like your story. Yeah, Underpope adds, I would add, look at the few of the stories that the market publishes as well to get a good sense of what they publish. Yeah, just throwing short stories at markets when you're not reading short stories, that always makes me wonder who's actually reading. If it's just authors who want to publish short stories and they're reading, it's just that kind of thinking makes me very sad. So I don't go down that road very much. But yeah, even if you have to buy an issue and figure out what that kind of market likes to publish. So no, there are no seasons, but different magazines are open at different times. What is a rookie mistake? Gosh, there's so many rookie mistakes. Not reading submission guidelines, I actually don't know how often this happens to Escape Pod because being the co-editor-in-chief, I don't look at a lot of the rookie mistakes. But some people will send a vignette. They're like, oh, I had this neat idea for a science fiction story. And really, it's like a science fiction scene with no actual story in it. We've gotten those before. There are people who don't understand that we're not sirs and we're not one person. And it's like getting the names of the editors right, or even just Dear Escape Pod, is an easy thing to do. But if you assume that someone else is the editor or misgender the editor, it's just starting off on the wrong foot, really. Another rookie mistake is disagreeing with the editor. Some people don't like being rejected, and actually no one likes being rejected. But some people prove that they don't respect the editor if they get rejected. I once got a reply to a rejection that was essentially, I disagree. I think my story's perfect for your magazine, and therefore I'm not submitting to you again. So it was like they were punishing us by not giving us any more stories since we rejected one. And I looked up the person, and I'm thinking, when would this hurt me? When would this hurt the magazine? I suppose if Ken Liu or John Chu or John Wiswell, any of those people looked at me and said, you know what, your magazine is not worth my stories. That would sting, but it would also be really unprofessional. And I can't imagine any of those people doing this. And this person was not. I don't think they'd published hardly anywhere. So it was weird. Any sort of argument doesn't make you look good. It's like there are reasons. Here's not a rookie mistake, but here's an idea that you need to put in your head, which will put you, if you understand this and absorb it, you will be way ahead of a lot of other writers, which is there are so many reasons that your story can get rejected that has nothing to do with you. And that's hard to hear when you realize, it's not your fault and it's out of your control, but it also is, it's kind of good to tell yourself for your ego, which is they just bought a story with very similar plot points, which you think is impossible because this is a unique story you thought of. But for some reason, someone else had a very similar idea and they got their story in first. And the editor's like, well, I don't want to print two of these. I hate to say it, but honest, if the person reading is having a crappy day, that will affect their view of your story. Although if I read 3 stories I really dislike in a row, I'll realize it's me and I'll stop reading and come back to them. But it could be too long, too dark, too light, or too similar to something else. And while some of those are submission guidelines, other times it's just subjective. A lot of people have, if you ask people who have won major awards for short stories, they will almost always tell you that the publisher of the short story was not their first choice. Like this got rejected at a whole bunch of different places, and then this person took a chance on it. I think, I remember, I'm a writer and an editor. Rejectomancy, I understand the need for it, but it really is wasted brain power. It's like, and if you don't know what rejectomancy is, it's looking at your rejections and reading them closely to try to find if there are any hidden things. And I hate to tell you, but your story was not right for our magazine sometimes means exactly that. Like I said, it may have nothing to do with you, but it could be that it was just almost good enough, but they didn't love it. Which no one wants to hear, because you don't know what to change. You don't know what to fix. But also, that is also a sign that you're on the right path, because if they couldn't find anything specific to say, this did not work for us, you just got to keep going. You got to keep writing and keep improving. So yeah, don't get bogged down in rejectomancy. I try to give good feedback on rejections, but sometimes it just wasn't right. You should only submit to one place at a time, right? Yes, definitely. You need to submit one story to one magazine or book or anthology or whatever. It feels unfair because they're going to take a little while to look at it, very likely. But if an editor spends time reading a story, pushing it up the ladder to have more people look at the story, and then by the time it reaches the top and the editor finds out that it's sold somewhere else, that doesn't make you look good. So the way to deal with this is submit one thing to a magazine and then start writing something else. Don't hang all of your hopes on one story. So submit a story, start writing something else, submit that somewhere else, and then keep going. What do I wish I knew when I started it? Like I said, it's been a while. It's the reason why, and I apologize to long-term listeners who've heard this story more than once. The reason why I started this podcast is because I knew so many people who had views of publishing in their minds that were very clearly beginner mistakes. And I remember the time I got, which I now know was highly unprofessional, and I won't name the magazine, but I got a rejection early on that was like 8 pages of photocopied information on both submission guidelines and how to write a story. And it kind of felt like they were just shoving all this stuff back at me and like pinpointing on the list what I had done wrong. Like I hadn't done everything wrong on that list, but basically it's like, here's how to write short stories because you can't do it. And it really upset me. And I had this image of me being on the wall as never buy from this person. She's blacklisted forever, which is ridiculous. I can tell you that Escape Pod does anonymous submissions. We don't want to be biased. So we do, which is really funny because we've purchased some things from friends and we're didn't know until we got a closer look at what was going on. But even if they're looking at your cover letter and your name, they're not gonna remember you if the story was bad. You just sent them a story that they didn't want. And then you can send them another story. And only if they look back in their database are they going to realize that you had done that. So I wish I knew that you put it out there and then you chill. So with regards to my comment about that really long rejection letter, Underpope says, I got the same rejection letter. It upset me so much I withdrew all other submissions I had at the time and gave up on writing and submitting for 6 months. Underpope, that breaks my heart. I'm so sorry that happened to you. It slowed me down too. I think it was unprofessional because we never try to insult people. It's not, especially if you're a writer who's also an editor, you know how much your email is going to bring down someone's day. You don't have to be a sadist about it. I've had a little bit of talk in chat about J.S. Carter says, I try to err on the John Wiswell Becky Chambers side of the hope-despair spectrum. Excellent. But I despair of ever writing something as good as John or Becky, but I can try. See, what you want to do is remember, here's not a rookie mistake, but just something you need to tell yourself is you're not gonna be Wiswell or Chambers. You're gonna be you. And this is something that I still have to tell myself. Maybe other people can do this. I can't. But identifying your own literary voice is like hearing your own accent. It's really hard to do. And when I write, I'm like, these are just words on a page. It doesn't evoke the heartrending beauty that Neil Gaiman's words do. It doesn't make for just description porn like China Miéville does. You're not supposed to open a book with a description of a city unless you're China Miéville. And then please do it because it's ridiculously rich. And I despaired of never being like them, never sounding like Connie Willis. And then I realized that whether I can hear it or not, I do have a voice, and I'm going to write like me. And hopefully someday people will really appreciate my voice. So don't worry about, of course, read widely, get inspired. You could do exercises to try to write in someone else's voice just to see how it feels. But you're going to develop your own voice, and that's what you want to do. You don't want to sound like Becky Chambers, because Becky Chambers already sounds like Becky Chambers. I know there was, I forgot exactly what they tried to do, but there were some guys who were really, it was kind of on the sad puppies, rabid puppies era, where they were really trying to bring down John Scalzi and claim that his books were not that good and that anybody could write them. And so they put forth a bunch of creative effort to write a book just like John Scalzi's to prove that I don't remember what they were trying to prove. But I'm like, just write your own book. Why would you put so much spite into this story? Unbelievable. So what I wish I knew when I started was rejections are coming. And it means absolutely nothing unless the only thing that's going to put you on a list is if you're a jerk. We've had sexist responses to our rejections, putting us down for being women and clearly not seeing the brilliance of this person's story. Those people we don't like to hear from again. So, there are some other people who've done some other things. But, just follow the rule. Don't be a jerk. Just submit the stories. Be respectful. Take the hit when it's coming. Because a hit is coming. Whether, at some point, it's coming. My agent is going out now with new books to sell for me. And I'm waiting for the punches. Because they may not, this may not work. I don't know. And what I say, if you're a new listener, is rejections are part of the job. As soon as you internalize that, it will make things easier. It's like submitting stories or any sort of art is like taking up boxing as a hobby. You're going to get hit. It's the nature of the beast. You're going to get hit. You're going to get rejected. So if you go in there thinking, I'm going to do a knockout punch my first time, and you get hit and knocked out, you're gonna feel really bad about yourself. But if you go in going, I'm gonna get hit, but I'm gonna get back up, or I'm gonna block it, or other boxing metaphors, or I'm going to learn not to leave myself open for a hit, and so I'm gonna learn what magazines don't like, and therefore that will make me a better writer to keep going. Yes, the Chumbawamba defense. Thank you. It's it's part of the job. And when you sit in, as I tell people, I know I say it a lot, but it's true every time. And repetition is going to make it go into your brain a little bit more. It's part of the job. And so if you're too afraid to submit, you're not doing the job of a writer. You're writing, but you're not doing the job. As close to, making writing a job as we can. And part of the job is getting rejected and saying, okay, that got rejected, and turning around and submitting it somewhere else. Or looking at it and saying, maybe I should edit something. But working writers get rejected. So when you get rejected, tell yourself you're doing the job, unlike people who are too scared to submit or too scared of rejection to submit. And it's part of the job, so you keep submitting and you keep writing. And that's really the biggest thing I wish I knew, was that it's going to happen, and all you can do is toughen yourself up. And the last question is, best thing you've ever submitted that you shouldn't have? I don't really understand that, because, if I don't understand the question, because it's like, you mean if it was submitted and I thought it was brilliant and no one else did? I'm not sure. I did self-publish a bunch of novellas about 15 years ago via podcast, because there wasn't really a novella market back then. There are more novella markets now. Novellas are a really hard sell, because they're long enough to where a magazine that pays you by the word can't really afford it. But it's too short for a publisher who can afford it. Escape Pod only runs novella and novelette reprints because we can't afford to pay what novellas are worth. There are some places that do focus all of their budget, or a lot of their budget, on novellas. GigaNotoSaurus, I believe. Hugo finalist, by the way. I think they only publish novellas, right? I'm going to feel really bad if I'm wrong here. But anyway, maybe if I had tried to get them published, I could have, but I didn't submit them anywhere. I just published them via podcast, and then I self-published them. So I guess that's all these questions. If you have any questions in the chat regarding short fiction or really anything else, let me know. And I'm going to go ahead and end the podcast here for the feed. If you would like to listen to the rest of this show, you can support at patreon.com/mightymur or mightymur.substack.com, or you can just come and hang out at the live show Thursday afternoons at 3 p.m. You can find me at murverse.com. I'm on most social media areas as Mighty Mur, except I'm most active on, I guess, Instagram, where I'm MightyMur2, and here, Twitch. You can find my books online, where books are sold. My latest book is Chaos Terminal. It is my Murder, She Wrote in Space series, The Midsolar Murders. My other podcast, Ditch Diggers, will be starting up soon. I got a new co-host who immediately, to spite me, turned around and went to Australia. So I've been waiting for her to come back and get jet-lagged. So then we'll talk plans. But thank you for listening. Let me know if you have any questions, mightymur@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time. And until then, you should be writing. Thank you for listening to I Should Be Writing, the longest-running writing podcast in existence. This episode was made possible by the Fabulous, who support the podcast via Patreon or Substack. Join the Fabulous at patreon.com/mightymur or mightymur.substack.com. Theme music provided by John Anelio. Art provided by Numbers Ninja. And podcast hosting provided by Libsyn. This episode is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 license. You can find all of my books and podcasts at murverse.com.
I should be writing. I should be submitting my next draft, but I'm sitting home watching Doctor Who. I'm sitting home watching Doctor Who.